All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, after flirting with going to the Big 12 conference, it looks like the University of Connecticut will remain in the Big East, at least for the time being. Now, UConn has been in talks recently about going to the Big 12, but Big 12 Conference Commissioner Brett Yormark has decided to pause those discussions for now. Yes, Yormark does want Connecticut in the Big 12, but I doubt that he had the backing from within his league to bring in the Huskies. Remember, of the 16 members currently in the Big 12, Yormark needed at least 12 yeses for Connecticut to get an invite. And, we know how things are. And I'll say this: Connecticut is a basketball powerhouse, okay, for both men's and women's hoops. But these realignment moves center around football, okay? And aside from being within the reach of the New York City market, what else does UConn football really bring to the table? Okay. You look at it over the last 3 years alone, Connecticut is 10 and 27. We just saw them get blown out this past Saturday on national television, courtesy of Maryland. And you look at UConn since they became a D1 program back in 2000, they've never had a 10-win season. And their last, okay, 9-win season, you got to go all the way back to 2007 to find the last time that happened. So that gives you an idea of things for Connecticut. They've never even finished a season ranked in the top 25 in their football. And I've said this and I'm going to continue saying this, okay? Connecticut belongs in the Big East where their roots are. And at the end of the day, UConn is a basketball school. I get it that Yormark wants to make the Big 12 a coast to coast league. But like I said initially, adding UConn was a reach at best. So these talks are paused for now, but that's not to say that this is something that cannot be revisited in the future. And at the end of the day, adding Connecticut for football was a hard ask for the Big 12 because we're talking about bringing in all of their other athletic programs to the Big 12 in 2026, and then you wouldn't add football for UConn until 2031. Basically, the Big 12 is going to have to sit up there and do a GoFundMe to help them, bring their stadium and bring their facilities and bring their football program up to respectability. Over the last 2 years, UConn has only had one home game where they had more than 30,000 people in attendance, and that was a season opener last year against North Carolina State. And how many of those people that were in attendance were Connecticut supporters, or how many of them were Wolfpack supporters? Okay, it's one of those where you really can't sit up there and be bragging about your conference, and you have one of your schools that's struggling to put 20,000 people into the stands for their home games. So honestly, UConn is at the crossroads, okay, because they want the football money. I totally get it. I totally understand it. But they don't have an alluring program. For me, one question is going to be football wise, should Connecticut remain at the FBS level or simply go to the FCS level? You look at some of UConn's Big East brethren, a la Villanova. Villanova's at the FCS level. They have no problems. They continue to have success on the basketball court. I know that Villanova has taken a slight step back recently following the retirement of Jay Wright, but the Wildcats will get themselves going again in the Big East. I truly do believe that from a basketball standpoint. But for me, you look at this, and there are a lot of questions. I mean, will Brett Yormark ultimately get his wish and bring in Connecticut? Possibly. I mean, like I said, the talks were paused. That's not to say that this is something that cannot be revisited in the future. And I think a lot of that falls in to the next round of realignment. And you look at it right now, for not just for UConn, but for Florida State and Clemson as well. Currently, I feel like all three of these schools are basically caught up in the wash because we know Clemson and Florida State, they want to leave the ACC. The Big Ten and the SEC, basically, at least for right now, are saying no, thank you. All right, and then UConn wants the Big 12, but again, your mark wants them. But I'm not sure if everybody within the Big 12 wants them right now. Then on top of that, you look at it like this: the Big 12 just added Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. That right there, that's four schools. That is a lot to welcome in. That's a lot to digest. And I think, in the last couple of years, the Big 12 has added about 7 or 8 schools. They've lost two, of course, in Texas and Oklahoma. And now you're kind of you're asking everybody to get accustomed to this because if you're Arizona, you've been in the Pac-10 and then Pac-12 for so many years, so you're accustomed to playing all of your conference affairs for all sports within the Pacific region. Now you're asking the folks from Arizona to travel to Central Florida and Cincinnati and Houston and West Virginia for conference games. Okay, you're asking the folks from UCF to travel to Utah and Baylor and other stops in the Midwest for conference games. Okay, I think right now everybody is trying to get their bearings and see how this thing is going to work out before they add somebody else, especially a program that's not going to bring anything to the table basketball or football wise rather. And again, like we've all said, basketball wise, both UConn's men's and women's programs took steps back rather in the American Athletic Conference. I know that basketball men's wise, UConn did win a national championship in the American Athletic Conference. However, that was their first year out of the Big East in 2014, and they still had a lot of Jim McCalhoun's holdovers, recruit wise and coaching wise, on that team. UConn going back to the Big East really saved their athletic program. And this is going to be very interesting to see how things are worked out going forward between the Big East and Connecticut because we've seen this song and dance the last couple of years as far as the big UConn flirting with trying to get out there, and the Big East is kind of there. Then also the buyout for UConn at a minimum is 15 million. Will that wording change between now and the next time that UConn maybe tries to leave? Okay, does the Big East want them there? That's the other thing. I mean, I don't know. Okay, I'm just throwing these things out there hypothetically, but nonetheless, the Big East, basketball wise, they just got their new television deal. A lot of that is predicated on Connecticut. I think Connecticut's going to be there at least for the next couple of years because at the end of the day, maybe if you're Connecticut, maybe you revisit this during the next round of realignment. Maybe you have a situation where Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC. Maybe the ACC wants them. Maybe the Big 12 says, you know what, maybe this thing can work. I don't know. Okay. But nonetheless, there's a lot of things on the table right now. I think personally, UConn should just stick and focus to basketball. Their football program has really not been that good. Maybe they take a step back and go to the FCS level. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see how this works out with the Big East and Connecticut going forward. I think Connecticut has a strong basketball program that's suited for the Big East. Okay, and I think they can do some great things there, both men's and women's wise, football wise, and as a football independent. And of course, right now we just have 3 football independents. Massachusetts is going to the MAC, and it's one of those where if you're UConn, clearly you're not Notre Dame when it comes to being a football independent. So it's one of those. I'm really not surprised that UConn didn't get to the Big 12. I really thought it was a reach at best, and at least for me, I'm happy that somehow, some way, some common sense has finally prevailed. Again, it's a pause, not to say that it cannot be revisited, but at least for now and the coming future, UConn will remain a football independent and all other sports will be in the Big East. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.